The diner's neon sign flickered, casting a red glow over the rain-slicked pavement. I stood behind the counter, wiping the same spot for the third time, when the bell above the door chimed. My heart stopped because there he was, the man who shattered me into 1,000 pieces 5 years ago. His name was Ethan Caldwell, and he looked almost the same, broad shoulders, that familiar leather jacket, and those piercing blue eyes that once held my entire world. But there was something different now, a heaviness in his step, a shadow in his gaze. He didn't see me at first, sliding into a booth by the window, staring out at the quiet streets of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. I gripped the counter, my knuckles white, as memories flooded back, late nights under the stars, whispered promises, and the day he walked away without a word. My name is Lucas Harper, and I'm not the same naive 22-year-old who thought love could conquer everything. Back then, I was a dreamer, sketching portraits in my notebook and believing Ethan and I were forever. We met in college, two kids from small towns, bonded by our secrets. I was openly gay, but Ethan, he was still figuring it out, torn between who he was and who his family expected him to be. When he left, he didn't just break my heart, broke my trust in love itself. I could have hidden in the kitchen, let someone else take his order. But something in me, anger, curiosity, or maybe something softer pushed me forward. I grabbed a pot of coffee and walked to his booth, my heart pounding like a drum. "Coffee?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan's head snapped up, and his eyes widened. "Lucas." His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in days. I didn't know you worked here. Didn't know you were back in town." I shot back, pouring the coffee without breaking eye contact. 5 years is a long time to disappear. He flinched, and I saw guilt. "I didn't mean to, Luke. Can we talk?" I wanted to say no, to tell him to leave and never come back. But the diner was empty, and the rain outside felt like a wall between us and the world. "You've got 5 minutes," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. Ethan leaned forward, his hands clasped around the mug like it was an anchor. "I messed up, Lucas. I know that. I left because I was scared of what we had, scared of what it meant. My dad, he found out about us. He gave me an ultimatum, leave you or lose everything." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "So you chose him. You chose money, your family's approval, over me." "It wasn't that simple," he said, his voice breaking. "I was a coward. I thought I could outrun who I was. But I couldn't. I've spent every day since regretting it." His words hit like a punch, stirring up the pain I'd buried. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing, and mine was long gone. "Why are you here, Ethan? Why now?" He looked down at the table, tracing the edge of the mug with his thumb. "My dad died last month. Left me the family business. I came back to settle things. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. About us." The air between us thickened, heavy with unspoken questions. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask why he hadn't called, written, anything. But all I said was, "You don't get to walk back into my life and expect forgiveness." "I know," he whispered, "but I'm hoping you'll let me try." The diner clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of the years we'd lost. I didn't know if I could forgive him, but something in his eyes, raw, unguarded, made me pause. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like I was still the only person who mattered. Or maybe I was just tired of carrying the hurt alone. "Order something," I said finally, standing up. "I've got work to do." As I walked back to the counter, I felt his eyes on me, and for the first time in years, my heart didn't feel entirely closed off. I didn't know what Ethan's return meant, but I knew one thing: this wasn't over. That night, I lay awake in my small apartment above the diner, replaying our conversation. Willow Creek was a small town, and secrets didn't stay buried long. Ethan's return would stir things up his family. My friends. The whispers that never quite died. I thought about the boy I'd loved. The one who'd held my hand under the table at this very diner, promising forever. Could he still be in there, beneath the guilt and the years? The next morning, I found a note slipped under the diner's door, written in Ethan's familiar scrawl. Meet me at the old oak by the lake. 7 p.m. Please. My heart raced, torn between burning it and holding it close. I didn't know him anything, but the pull of what we'd been was stronger than I wanted to admit. By noon, the diner was buzzing with locals, and the gossip had already started. Heard Ethan Caldwell's back, said Mrs. Delaney, sipping her tea. His dad's passing must have hit him hard. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. But inside, I was a mess. Ethan's family had always been the town's backbone, wealthy, powerful, and rigid. His father, Robert Caldwell, had been a man who valued reputation above all else. I could still remember the way he'd looked at me that summer, like I was a stain on his perfect world. As the day wore on, I kept glancing at the clock. 7 p.m. was hours away, but it felt like a deadline. Part of me wanted to run, to leave Willow Creek and Ethan behind for good. But another part, the part that still sketched his face in the margins of my notebook, wanted answers. By 6:30, I was standing by my apartment window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The old oak by the lake was where we'd shared our first kiss, where we dreamed of a future that never came. I didn't know what Ethan wanted, but I knew I couldn't keep running from the past. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, the cool evening air sharp against my skin. The lake was a mile out of town, a quiet place where the world felt softer, kinder. As I walked, I braced myself for whatever came next, knowing one thing for certain: Ethan Caldwell had broken me once, and I wouldn't let him do it again. The path to the lake was overgrown, the gravel crunching under my boots as I walked. The old oak stood tall against the fading light, its branches swaying in the evening breeze. Ethan was already there, leaning against the tree, his silhouette achingly familiar. "Lucas," he said softly as I approached, his voice carrying the weight of years. He straightened, shoving his hands into his pockets, and I noticed the way his shoulders tensed, like he was bracing for a fight. "Thanks for coming." I stopped a few feet away, crossing my arms. "Don't make me regret it." He nodded, his eyes searching mine. "I won't. I needed to see you somewhere that wasn't the diner. Somewhere that felt like us." "Us?" I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet. "There hasn't been an us in years, Ethan. You made sure of that." "I know," he said, stepping closer. "And I hate myself for it. But I'm here now, and I'm not running anymore." I wanted to believe him, but the scars he'd left were deep. 5 years ago, we'd stood under this same tree, his arms around me, promising we'd face the world together. Then his father's ultimatum came, and Ethan chose the easy path, leaving me to pick up the pieces alone. I'd spent years rebuilding myself, working late shifts at the diner, sketching in the quiet hours to keep the loneliness at bay. Now here he was, threatening to unravel it all. "Why now?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "Your dad's gone. You're free. So what do you want from me?" Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving mine. "I want a chance to make things right. I want to know you again, Lucas. The real you, not the version I broke." His words hit hard, stirring something I'd tried to bury. I turned away, looking out at the lake, its surface rippling in the moonlight. "You don't know me anymore," I said. "I'm not that kid who believed in fairy tales." "Then let me learn," he said, his voice earnest. Let me prove I'm not the same coward who left. I faced him, my heart a tangle of anger and longing. And what happens when it gets hard again? When your family's legacy, this town, the world, it all pushes back. You gonna run again? He flinched, but he didn't look away. No. I'm done running. I've spent 5 years trying to be someone I'm not, and it's killing me. I'm here, Lucas, because you're the only thing that ever felt real. The air between us crackled, and for a moment, I was 22 again, standing under this tree, believing in him. But I wasn't that boy anymore. I'd learned to protect myself, to guard my heart. Words are cheap, Ethan, I said. You'll have to do better than that. He nodded, like he'd expected it. I will. I'll show you. We stood there in silence, the lake lapping softly at the shore. I didn't know if I could trust him, but I couldn't deny the pull between us, like a thread that had never fully snapped. I have to get back, I said finally, turning to leave. Lucas, he called after me. I'm not giving up. I didn't respond, but as I walked away, his words echoed in my mind. By the time I reached my apartment, I was shaking not from the cold, but from the storm of emotions he'd stirred up. I sat at my desk, pulling out my sketchbook, and started drawing. It was Ethan's face. Always Ethan, his eyes haunted and hopeful. The next day at the diner, the gossip had spread like wildfire. Ethan's return was the talk of Willow Creek, and every customer had a theory. He's here to sell the family business, one said. No, he's running from something, another insisted. I kept my head down, pouring coffee and clearing plates, but I felt their eyes on me. They remembered us. The whispers from 5 years ago. The way Ethan's father had made sure everyone knew I was trouble. Around noon, Ethan walked in again, this time with a purpose. He didn't sit, just leaned against the counter, his voice low. I'm helping with the town festival this weekend. Thought you might want to come. Maybe, draw something for it. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. You're volunteering now. Trying to be part of this place again, he said. And I know you used to love the festival. Your sketches were always the best part. He wasn't wrong. The Willow Creek Festival had been my escape growing up, a place where I could lose myself in art and forget the small-town judgment. But going with Ethan felt like stepping into a minefield. I'll think about it, I said, turning away. That night, I dug through my old sketchbooks, finding drawings from the summer we'd spent together. There was one of Ethan laughing, his head thrown back, the lake sparkling behind him. I traced the lines, wondering if that boy still existed, wondering if I could let myself hope again. By Friday, I'd made up my mind. I'd go to the festival, not for Ethan, but for me. I needed to see if he was serious, if he could be more than a ghost from my past. I packed my sketchbook and headed to the town square, where the festival was in full swing, lights strung across trees, music drifting through the air, and the smell of fried dough and cotton candy. Ethan was there, helping set up a booth, his sleeves rolled up, a smile on his face as he talked to kids. He looked lighter, like he was trying to find his place. When he saw me, his face lit up, and my heart did a traitorous flip. You came, he said, jogging over. Don't get used to it, I replied, but there was a softness in my voice I couldn't hide. We spent the afternoon together, not quite like old times, but close. I sketched the crowd, the lights, the life of the festival, and Ethan watched, quiet but present. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of something hope. Maybe, or the ghost of what we'd had. As the sun set, Ethan handed me a caramel apple, his fingers brushing mine. Thank you, he said, for giving me a chance. I didn't respond, but I took the apple, And we stood there, watching the festival unfold. Two broken pieces trying to find their way back together. The festival lights twinkled like stars, casting a warm glow over the town square. Ethan and I stood side by side, the caramel apple sticky in my hand, its sweetness a sharp contrast to the bitterness I still carried. For a moment, it felt like we could be something again, but the weight of 5 years apart kept me grounded. You still draw like you're capturing souls, Ethan said, glancing at my sketchbook. I'd been sketching a group of kids chasing fireflies, their laughter echoing through the night. His voice was soft, almost reverent, and it stirred something in me I wasn't ready to face. Don't, I said, closing the sketchbook. Don't act like you know me. He looked away, jaw tight. I'm trying. Lucas, I want to know you again. I wanted to believe him, but trust wasn't something I could just hand over. The festival was a bubble, a moment where the past felt softer, but I knew better than to let my guard down. You don't get to just walk back in and pick up where we left off, I said. You broke me, Ethan. You don't get to pretend that didn't happen. He nodded, his eyes dark with regret. I know. And I'll spend every day proving I'm not that guy anymore. Before I could respond, a voice cut through the crowd. Ethan Caldwell, as I live and breathe. It was Sarah, Ethan's older sister, striding toward us. Her blonde hair was pulled back, her smile bright but sharp. She'd always been kind to me, but she was a Caldwell, and that name carried weight. Lucas, she said, her eyes softening as they landed on me. Didn't expect to see you two together. Neither did I said, my tone clipped. She glanced between us, sensing the tension. Well, it's good to see you both. Ethan, Mom's asking for you. She's at the pie booth. Ethan hesitated, looking at me like he didn't want to leave. Go, I said, waving him off. I'm fine. He nodded reluctantly and followed Sarah, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I wandered through the festival, sketching to keep my hands busy. But every face I drew turned into Ethan Scher's eyes, his smile, the way he'd looked at me under the oak tree. By the time the festival wound down, I was exhausted, not from walking, but from the emotional tug-of-war inside me. I was about to head home when Ethan found me again, his face serious. Can I walk you back? He asked. I shrugged, too tired to argue. We walked in silence, the town quiet except for the distant hum of the festival. When we reached my apartment above the diner, he stopped, his hands in his pockets. I meant what I said. Lucas, I'm not giving up. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the boy I'd loved mixed with the man he'd become. Good night, Ethan, I said, closing the door before I could say anything else. The next week was a blur of diner shifts and restless nights. Ethan came by every day, not pushing, just there. He'd order coffee, make small talk, and leave tips bigger than his bill. It was maddening, the way he was slowly chipping away at my walls. One afternoon, he showed up with a small package wrapped in brown paper. For you, he said, sliding it across the counter. I opened it cautiously, revealing a set of charcoal pencils the same brand I'd used in college. How did you? I started, then stopped. He remembered. You always said they were the best for shading, he said, his voice soft. I saw them in a shop in Philly and thought of you. I wanted to throw them back, to tell him he couldn't buy my forgiveness. But instead, I muttered, thanks, and tucked them away. That night, I used them to sketch the lake, the oak, the memory of us. The lines were softer, more forgiving than I meant them to be. By the end of the week, Ethan asked me to meet him at the town library. Of all places. I'm helping digitize some old records, he said. Thought you might want to see. Curiosity got the better of me, and I went. The library was quiet, the air thick with the smell of old books. Ethan was at a table, surrounded by stacks of papers, letters, photos, town history. He looked up when I walked in, his smile tentative. "These are from the Caldwell estate," he said. "I found something you might like." He handed me a photo, yellowed with age. It was of two men, maybe in their 30s, standing by the lake, their arms around each other. The back read, "James and Michael, 1952. I looked at Ethan, confused. "They were friends of my grandfather," he said. "I found their letters. They were, like us, in love, but hiding it. My family buried their story." I stared at the photo, my chest tight. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to know I'm not hiding anymore," he said. "I'm done letting my family's legacy dictate who I am." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, clutching the photo. We spent the afternoon sorting through records, the silence between us comfortable for the first time. When I left, Ethan walked me out, his hand brushing mine. I didn't pull away. That night, I dreamed of the lake, of Ethan, of a life where we didn't have to hide. When I woke, my sketchbook was open to a new drawing, two figures under the oak, their hands intertwined. For the first time, I let myself hope, just a little, that maybe Ethan was telling the truth. The library photo haunted me. Two men, their love captured in a single frame, hidden away like a secret too dangerous to keep. It made me think of Ethan and me, of what we could have been if fear hadn't torn us apart. I started seeing Ethan everywhere, not just at the diner, but in the way I'd catch myself sketching his profile, or how my heart skipped when his name came up in town gossip. He was relentless, showing up with small gestures, a coffee left on the counter with my name in his handwriting. A book of poetry slipped into my mailbox with a note that read, "You always loved Frost." Each one chipped away at my resolve, but I wasn't ready to let him in. Not yet. One evening, as I locked up the diner, I found Ethan waiting outside, leaning against a lamppost. The street was quiet, the air crisp with the first hints of fall. "Walk with me?" he asked, his voice low. I hesitated, then nodded. We headed toward the edge of town, where the streets gave way to fields. The silence between us was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke. "I'm selling the family business." I stopped walking, turning to face him. "What? That's your whole legacy." "It's not mine," he said, his eyes steady. "It's my father's. His rules, his expectations. I'm done living for him." I didn't know what to say. The Caldwell name was Willow Creek Factories. Jobs. Power. For Ethan to walk away was unthinkable. "What are you going to do?" I asked. He shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Figure out who I am without it. Maybe start something new. Something that's mine." I studied him, searching for the boy who'd run from me. He wasn't there. This Ethan was different, still haunted, but determined. "You're serious?" I said. "Dead serious," he replied. "And I want you to be part of it, Lucas. Whatever happens next." My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. "You're asking a lot." "I know," he said, "but I'm not asking you to decide now. Just think about it." We walked back in silence, but his words stayed with me. That night, I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with possibilities. Could I trust him? Could we build something new? Or was I just setting myself up for another heartbreak? The next day, the diner was busier than usual, a rush of locals and tourists passing through. Ethan didn't show, and I hated how much I noticed. Around closing, Sarah came in, her face tense. Lucas, can we talk? I nodded, leading her to a booth. She sat, twisting her hands together. It's about Ethan, she said. He's stirring things up with the family. Mom's furious about him selling the business. She's blaming you. Me? I laughed, incredulous. I didn't ask him to do anything. I know, she said quickly. But you know how this town is. They see you two together, and suddenly it's 2018 all over again. They're talking. Lucas, be careful. Her warning hit hard. Willow Creek had never been kind to people like me, openly gay, unapologetic. Ethan's family had made sure of that. Thanks for the heads up, I said, my voice tight. After she left, I cleaned the diner with more force than necessary. My mind a mess. Ethan was risking everything: his family, his reputation, his future. For what? Me. The thought was thrilling and terrifying. That evening, I found another note under the diner's door. Meet me at the lake. 8 p.m. I need you. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't stay away. The lake was still, the oak a dark silhouette against the sky. Ethan was there, pacing, his face etched with worry. Lucas, he said when he saw me, relief flooding his voice. I didn't think you'd come. What's wrong? I asked, my guard up. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes wild. My mom found out I've been seeing you. She's threatening to cut me off completely, not just the business, but everything. The house, the accounts, my name. I stared at him, my heart sinking. And what did you tell her? I told her the truth, he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. That I love you. That I've always loved you. The words hit like a tidal wave, washing away my defenses. I wanted to scream, to cry, to tell him he was too late. But all I could do was stand there, frozen, as he stepped closer. I'm not running this time, he said. I choose you, Lucas. If you'll have me. I didn't know what to say, so I turned and walked away, my heart pounding. I needed time, space, something to make sense of this. But as I reached the edge of the lake, I stopped, looking back. Ethan was still there, under the oak, waiting. I didn't go back that night. But I didn't sleep, either, my mind replaying his words, his face, the way he'd stood his ground. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future with him, not the one we'd lost, but a new one, built on something stronger. Ethan's confession hung over me like a storm cloud, heavy and impossible to ignore. I love you. I've always loved you. The words echoed through every quiet moment, every sketch I tried to lose myself in. I wanted to believe him, but belief was a risk I wasn't sure I could take. The next morning, I found him at the diner before it opened, sitting on the steps with 2 coffees in hand. Figured you'd need this, he said, handing me one. His smile was tentative, but his eyes were steady, like he'd made peace with whatever came next. Thanks, I said, taking the coffee but keeping my distance. What are you doing here, Ethan? Trying to be honest, he said. I meant what I said last night. I'm not going anywhere, Lucas. Not unless you tell me to. I looked at him, searching for a lie, but all I saw was the boy I'd loved, now a man willing to fight for me. You're making this hard, I muttered, unlocking the diner. Good, he said, following me inside. You deserve someone who fights for you. The day passed in a blur, Ethan lingering at the counter, helping with small tasks, clearing plates, refilling sugar jars. It was mundane, but it felt like a promise. By closing, I was exhausted, not from work, but from the constant tug of war in my heart. Let me take you somewhere, he said as I locked up. Just for an hour. Please. Against my better judgment, I agreed. He drove us to a hill overlooking Willow Creek, the town lights twinkling below. It was where we'd gone years ago, dreaming of a life beyond this place. I used to come here after I left, he said, his voice low. I'd sit here and think about you, wondering if you hated me. I did, I admitted, staring at the horizon. For a long time. He nodded, like he'd expected it. I deserve that. But I'm hoping you'll see I'm different now. I turned to him, my voice sharp. Why should I believe you won't run again? Because I've got nothing left to lose, he said. My family's disowned me. The business is gone. All I have is the truth. I love you, and I'll spend my life proving it if you let me. His words cracked something in me, and I felt tears prick my eyes. I don't know if I can trust you, I said, my voice breaking. But I want to. He reached for my hand, and this time, I didn't pull away. We sat there, the silence heavy with possibility, until the stars came out. When he drove me home, he didn't push, just kissed my forehead and said, I'll be here tomorrow. The next few days were a dance of caution and hope. Ethan was true to his word, showing up at the diner, helping with the festival cleanup, even joining me at the library to sort more records. Each moment felt like a step toward something new, but the fear lingered. What if this was just another dream that would break? One afternoon, a group of Ethan's old friends came into the diner, their eyes cold when they saw us together. Still chasing trouble, Caldwell, one of them said, his voice dripping with disdain. Ethan didn't flinch. If loving Lucas is trouble, then yeah, I am. The words were a declaration, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. I froze, my heart racing, as the room went quiet. His friends left, muttering, but Ethan just looked at me, his eyes fierce. I meant it, he said. I'm done hiding. That night, I invited him to my apartment. It was the first time he'd been there, and I felt exposed, like he could see every wound I'd carried. We sat on my couch, the silence heavy. Tell me something real, I said. Something you've never told anyone. He took a deep breath, his eyes distant. When I left, I tried to be what my dad wanted. I dated women, went to church, played the part. But every night, I'd dream of you. It was like my heart wouldn't let me forget. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. I dreamed of you too. He looked at me, his eyes soft, and for the first time, I let myself lean into him. His arms around me felt like home, but I was still scared. What happens now? I asked. We figure it out, he said. Together. I nodded, my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Ethan's arms around me felt like a memory I tried to erase, but my heart hadn't forgotten. We stayed on my couch until the early hours, talking about everything and nothing. The years apart, the dreams we'd buried, the people we'd become. It was terrifying, letting him in again, but it also felt like waking up. The next morning, I woke to find him gone. A note on my counter, had to run an errand. Back soon. I smiled despite myself, tracing his handwriting. But the warmth faded when I got to the diner and saw the graffiti on the door, fags not welcome. The words were jagged, red, and angry, a knife to the gut. I scrubbed until my hands ached, but the paint wouldn't budge. By the time Ethan arrived, I was shaking, tears mixing with the soap. Lucas, what happened? He asked, dropping to his knees beside me. Someone doesn't like us, I said, my voice hollow. Guess your big declaration yesterday pissed them off. His face darkened, and he grabbed the sponge, scrubbing with me. "I'm not letting this town win," he said. "Not again." We painted over the graffiti before opening, but the words stayed with me. Willow Creek had always been a mixed bag. Some folks were kind, others cruel. Ethan's return, our closeness, had stirred the pot. I could handle the whispers, but this felt different. Dangerous. That afternoon, Sarah came by, her face pale. "I heard about the diner," she said. "I'm so sorry, Lucas. I think it might be my mom's doing. She's been talking to some of the old guard, stirring things up." I stared at her, my stomach dropping. "Your mom. She's not handling Ethan's choices well," Sarah said. "She's always been about control. I'll talk to her, but be careful." Ethan overheard, his jaw tight. "I'll deal with her," he said, storming out before I could stop him. I didn't see him for the rest of the day, and worry gnawed at me. By evening, I closed the diner early and headed to the Caldwell estate, a sprawling mansion on the edge of town. I hadn't been there since Ethan's father caught us together, his voice like ice as he told me to stay away from his son. The gate was open, and I found Ethan in the garden, arguing with his mother. She was tall, elegant, her face a mask of fury. "You're throwing away everything we built," she shouted. "For him?" "Yes," Ethan said, his voice steady. "For him. For me. For the life I want." She saw me then, her eyes narrowing. "You," she spat. "You've ruined him." "Enough," Ethan snapped, stepping between us. "You don't get to talk to him like that. I'm done living your lie." She stared at him, then turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the stone path. Ethan turned to me, his face a mix of exhaustion and resolve. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want you to see that." I shook my head, my voice soft. "You stood up to her." "For me." "For us," he corrected, taking my hand. "I'm all in, Lucas." We left the estate, walking back to town under a sky full of stars. For the first time, I felt like we were on the same side, fighting the same fight. But the graffiti, the whispers, his mother, they were reminders that this wouldn't be easy. The next day, Ethan showed up at the diner with a plan. "Let's start something," he said. "A gallery, maybe. For your art. For others like us. A place where people can be themselves." I laughed, caught off guard. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said, his eyes bright. "I've got some money saved. We could do this, Lucas. Together." The idea was wild, impossible, but it lit something in me. I'd always dreamed of a space where art could tell the stories we were afraid to speak. "Okay," I said, my voice shaky. "Let's talk about it." We spent the next week planning, sketching ideas on napkins, dreaming up a future. It wasn't perfect. There were still dirty looks, hushed comments, but Ethan was there, steady and unyielding. One night, as we sat by the lake, he took my hand and said, "I'm not going anywhere, Lucas. Not this time." I looked at him, the moonlight catching his eyes, and I believed him. For the first time, I let myself imagine a life where we didn't just survive, but thrive together. The idea of the gallery became our lifeline, a spark of hope in the face of Willow Creek's judgment. Ethan and I spent late nights at the diner, sketching layouts and brainstorming names. "Open Heart Studio," I suggested one night, and Ethan's smile was brighter than the neon sign outside. But hope didn't erase the tension. The graffiti wasn't a one-time thing. Another message appeared on the diner's back wall, this time with my name. Ethan wanted to report it, but I stopped him. "They want a reaction," I said. Let's not give them one. He didn't like it, but he agreed, his jaw tight. We'll show them, he said. With the gallery. With us. We found a small storefront in town, a rundown space that had once been a bookstore. Ethan used his savings to secure the lease, and we spent days cleaning, painting, turning it into something ours. Locals watched, some curious, others hostile. One afternoon, a group of teenagers threw rocks at the windows, shattering one. Ethan chased them off, but I saw the toll it took on him. They're not going to stop, I said, sweeping up the glass. This town doesn't change. Then we'll change it, he said, his voice fierce. We'll make a space where people like us don't have to hide. His determination was infectious, and I threw myself into the work. I hung my sketches on the walls, alongside photos of James and Michael, the men from the library records. Their story became our inspiration, a reminder that love could survive, even in the shadows. Opening day was set for a Saturday, and we invited the whole town, knowing most wouldn't come. Sarah helped spread the word, and a few locals artists, misfits, allies promised to show up. The night before, Ethan and I stood in the gallery, the walls alive with color and story. It's beautiful, he said, his arm around me. You're beautiful. I leaned into him, my heart full. We did this. The opening was small but powerful. A dozen people came, including Mrs. Delaney, who bought one of my sketches. Sarah brought her kids, who ran around, laughing. For a moment, it felt like we'd won. But as the crowd thinned, Ethan's mother appeared in the doorway, her face cold. Ethan, she said, ignoring me. This is a mistake. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. No, Mom. This is who I am. She stared at him, then at me, her eyes sharp. You'll regret this, she said, and left. Her words lingered, but Ethan squeezed my hand. She's wrong, he said. This is just the beginning. That night, we celebrated at the lake, just the two of us. Ethan built a small fire, and we sat close, the warmth chasing away the chill. I'm proud of you, he said, his voice soft. Of us. I looked at him, the firelight dancing in his eyes, and felt something shift. The hurt wasn't gone, but it was softer, overshadowed by something stronger. I love you, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Ethan's breath caught, and he pulled me close, kissing me like it was the first time. I love you too, he whispered. Always have. We stayed by the lake until dawn, talking, laughing, dreaming. For the first time, I believed we could build something real, not just a gallery, but a life. But the next day, reality hit hard. The gallery's windows were smashed. Paint splattered across the walls. A note was taped to the door, leave. Ethan's face was a storm, but I grabbed his hand. We're not running, I said. He nodded, his eyes fierce. Together, he said. We cleaned up, repainted, and reopened the next day. A few more people came, drawn by the story of our defiance. Slowly, the gallery became a beacon, a place where others like us queer kids, artists, dreamers found refuge. Ethan and I were a team, stronger than the hate around us. The gallery became our heart, a fragile but fierce symbol of who we were. Each day brought new challenges, whispers, glares, another broken window, but also new faces. People who saw what we were building and wanted to be part of it. Ethan and I were inseparable, our love a quiet strength against the storm. One morning, as we repainted the gallery's front door, Ethan got a call. His face paled as he listened, then hung up. It's my mom, he said. She's sick. Really sick. I squeezed his hand, my heart heavy. Go to her. He shook his head. Not without you. I didn't want to face Mrs. Caldwell again, but Ethan needed me. We drove to the estate, the air thick with tension. She was in bed, frail but still sharp-eyed. Ethan, she said, her voice weak. I was wrong. About you. About him. I froze, stunned. Ethan knelt beside her, his voice soft. It's okay, Mom. No, she said, tears in her eyes. I pushed you away. I'm sorry. They talked for hours, and I stayed quiet, letting them heal. When we left, Ethan was quiet, but lighter, like a weight had lifted. Thank you, he said, pulling me close. For being here. Weeks turned into months, and the gallery grew. We hosted art classes, poetry readings, a safe space for queer kids to share their stories. Willow Creek didn't change overnight, but it softened, some of its sharp edges worn down by our stubborn hope. One evening, as we closed the gallery, Ethan pulled me outside, under the stars. I have something for you, he said, handing me a small box. Inside was a ring, simple but beautiful, engraved with an oak leaf. Lucas Harper, he said, his voice shaking. I broke you once, and I'll spend my life making up for it. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down my face as I nodded, unable to speak. He slipped the ring on my finger, and we kissed, the world fading away. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was better. It was real, hard-earned, ours. We married by the lake, under the old oak, surrounded by Sarah, Mrs. Delaney, and a handful of friends who'd become family. Mrs. Caldwell was there, weak but smiling, her hand in Ethan's. The town watched, some with love, others with grudging respect. We didn't care. We had each other. Years later, the gallery still stands, a testament to love that refused to break. Ethan and I built a life not perfect, but true. He broke me once, but he came back, and together, we healed.